Are you enjoying this Grow Day? Isn't this a blast? I mean, I'm sitting here today and I'm listening to the speakers and I'm hanging in here and taking notes just like you are. And I'm thinking, what a wonderful thing to be able to spend a day with like-minded people who want to grow, develop themselves, improve themselves, and get better. I was talking to you about the potential question, how far can I go? And we started talking about how do we build out this potential path in the area of growth. And I shared with you three things this morning. I shared with you that I'm aware of the three pillars of potential. This is the foundation, remember, awareness. You've got to be aware. You've got to be able to develop your strengths, and you've got to be able to make the right choices. Then the second thing I talked about is you need to continually invest in your personal development and your personal growth. And then I talked about maximizing. You got to maximize your mentoring. I gave the John Wooden story, the 5 pages, and you got it. So let's go to number 4. So can I talk to you about, just for a few moments, about following your heart? And I have a little phrase in parentheses after I say I follow my heart. And basically my phrase is, my heart knows. My heart really does know. And I think there's something about growth and authenticity and having a real sense of being in touch with yourself that's really essential for your development. You know, authenticity doesn't guarantee success, but without it, it guarantees failure. And I see a lot of people that have never been authentic or real or come to grips with where they are. And there's something that's beautiful about there are times when you have to follow your heart in your growth, because your heart knows. Your heart knows how you're wired, and your heart knows things that other people don't realize. I can still remember when I was beginning to write books. Obviously, I was a rookie. I was very green. There were so many things I didn't know. And I remember I told my publisher I wanted to write leadership books, and they discouraged me. They said, you don't want to write leadership books. Only 8% of the people read leadership books. And so if you write leadership books, you've lost 90%, 92% of your audience. They said, you don't really want to write leadership books. You want to go broader than leadership. And I said, but my heart's leadership, and that's what I want to train leaders. And so I have to write leadership books. And they said, well, you can write leadership books, but honestly, if you do, you just won't sell a lot of them. 36 million later. I'm getting out of the author pile. Are we okay? And I was willing to have not very many people have my book, because I just had to follow my heart. Are you with me? I would rather follow my heart and be small than lose my authenticity and my realness and be big. Because if I'm not who I am and I'm big, it's not who I am. And there's going to be a day that I give account to God for my giftedness, but God's never going to hold me accountable for gifts I don't have. And He's never going to hold me accountable for dreams I don't have. And so there's something about listening. In fact, the publisher also told me, because I like lists. And they said, you write with too many lists. You just have numbers everywhere. And I do. Every chapter I've got numbers. I mean, I just have lists. And they said, you can't sell books if you write lists. People don't want lists. I said, well, I don't want lists. In fact, if somebody asked me, they'd say, John, what's one of your favorite things? I'd say one of my favorite things is making a list. I like lists. Are you with me? And they said, well, you can't have lists. And I said, well, I'm going to do lists. I'm going to do leadership. And I'm just talking about following your, I remember 11 years ago when we started the John Maxwell team, the coaching company. And I had most of my friends and advisors said, don't do this. You don't want to do this. You've spent all your life building a reputation of integrity and leadership and authenticity. And if you start a coaching company, you're going to get some screw-ups in there. And they're going to do something stupid. And then it's going to be, well, John Maxwell coach murdered somebody. You know what I mean? And I thought, well, that isn't good. That really isn't good. That could be a little blunt there. And I had to work through it. And one day I said, no, I'm going to give my name to you. And I'm going to give my name to you because I think that people deserve a shot. People deserve a chance. And if my name will help you get into a door, if my name will help you get a client, then why shouldn't I help you? Because my name is John and I'm your friend. Thank you, John. And that's who I am. Now, I'm talking about, I follow my heart. And I have a whole bunch of people said, John, you're going to regret. I haven't regretted it. By the way, we're in our 11th year at 48,000 coaches. And there have been maybe, 4 or 5 screw ups. We've had a few, but we don't have many. And you know what I found out? The other coaches go pounce on the screw up. And they're saying, don't mess us up. You're messing our name. And I didn't. So it's so fun to watch my coaches just slap them around. And I think, just go get them. Just go get them. And I don't have to please. I haven't had to please anything. But you got to follow your heart. I can remember after we trained 5 million leaders in every country of the world in a 19-year period. I can so remember when I sat down with my board and they said, let's just celebrate, have a big party, and let's call it a day. And I said, well, I think there's something more that we need to be doing in leadership. And they said, what is? I said, I think we need to do transformation. I think we need to train leaders how to be transformational leaders. And I think we ought to go try to bring transformation into countries. And they looked at me and they said, well, do you know how that's going to work? I looked at my board. I said, no, I don't. I don't. I have a vision for it, but I don't know how it's going to work. And they said, well, can you define transformation? I said, well, I can't do that either. But I said, can I tell you something? I'll know it when I see it. And I went to Guatemala with some of the players, and we started doing transformation, and that's when we learned values, and we slowly. Now, don't miss this. Don't miss this, because let me tell you something. You can't think your way into greatness. You have to act your way. Wow. I call this action attraction. And what I'm saying is very simple. To reach your potential, you have to move. And the word traction has the word action in it. There has to be a movement. And let me tell you something. In reaching your potential, there are times when you will move, but you won't have clarity. But you know that you have to move to get clarity. You know that you have to move to find the opportunities. Opportunities don't come and sit and come and find us while we're sitting. We're supposed to leave our footprints in the sands of time, not our butt prints in the sands of time. You can't sit on your ass, but, for the Christians, is this, we're recording this, aren't we? If you're listening to this right now, my name is Mark Cole. I'm speaking. John Maxwell's not feeling good today, so I'm filling in. I'm just filling in for him. Nothing like having friends, you know. But there's something about the moment that you take action, then all of a sudden, opportunities begin to come your way. And when you begin to move, resources move. Can I tell you something? When you stop moving, the resources stop moving. I run into people all the time who said, well, we were starting and then we stopped because the resources weren't coming. And I said there, no, when you stopped the resources. And the vision, it always gets clearer as you move. The first day of your vision is the day that the vision is the most unclear of all. But when this action attraction, here's how it works. The moment you start moving, all of a sudden people begin to come to you that you would have never expected. And ideas begin to fill your mind, and you'll begin to have words that you begin to say. And none of this happens without movement. And so I'm just saying to you that follow your heart, because some of you have a dream that God gave you. What did they ask Mother Teresa? How do you feed the world? And what did Mother Teresa said? You start with one. And I can tell you something. You can't go from where you are to great. You have to go from where you are to good, to better. Great ideas don't begin great ideas. Great ideas begin as good ideas, and then they become better ideas. It takes several good ideas to become a great idea. It takes a lot of small, so don't despise the small dream, and don't wait. I've seen people not do the small things because they're waiting for the big things. And if you don't do the small things, you don't get the big things. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. What's the master say? I'll make you ruler over many. But you don't get to be ruler over many until you've done a few. You got to start with few. And don't despise the few. Be so excited with three. Three's good. One's wonderful. If you can't change your world with one, you can't change your world with a million. The authenticity of your dream will always be tested in small places with a few people. That is so stinking good. In fact, Aaron's our content curator. Write that down. I've never said that before. That's huge. In fact, I've already forgot what I said. That's the problem. That's the problem. You get old and you start forgetting stuff. The other day, Margaret and I were in the car, and she said, John, we're forgetting everything. I said, I know, baby, we are. She said, we got to have a plan. I said, I know. She said, I got one. I said, what is it? She said, you remember who we are, and I'll remember where we're going. It's working. When we divided that load up, it's a lot better. It's just getting better. And what I'm saying to you is don't despise small. Don't despise little. Don't look and say, well, this isn't really making a difference. It's making a difference. And by the way, if it's valid to make a difference with one, it can be valid to make a difference with a million. So just enjoy and embrace it where you are. Don't play the win game. Well, when I get there, I'll do it. No. Play the I'm in game. I'm in the game right now. So stay where that. Okay. So I followed my heart. Number 5. To reach your potential, one of the things I really work hard at is I have an abundance mindset. And we hear a lot about abundance mindset, so we don't need to talk a lot about it. It's the way we think. But all leaders have one thing in common regardless of country. I mean, I just did a worldwide trip around to Vietnam and Dubai, just came back about 10 days ago. And no matter what, I've spoken in, I think, 120 countries. But no matter what country, there's only one thing that all leaders have in common, and is all leaders see more than others see, and they see before others see. That's what they have in common. They see a bigger picture, and they see it quicker. In other words, there's an abundance in leadership that if you don't have, you won't lead. So the scarcity stuff never works in leadership. You have to have an abundance. And I realized many years ago, when Margaret and I were I'm talking about 50 years ago. When McDonald's was young, I remember one day going to McDonald's and Margaret wanted a Diet Coke, and so I went up to the counter and I asked the girl for a Diet Coke, and she said, I'm sorry, she said, we don't have Diet Coke. It was before they had Diet Coke. And so I thought, okay. And so I said, could I have a cup of ice? Because what I thought is I'll get a cup of ice and I'll go to some convenience store, get her a Diet Coke, pour it in there for her, give it to her, and everything will be fine. And when I ask her for a cup of ice, she's looking at her little register. And she gets this real puzzled look on, and she says, oh my. Huh? See, she can't find cup of ice. And she can't find it, and so she said, I'm sorry, sir. I'm not sure I can do that. And I smiled and I said, yes, you can. And she said, okay. And she got me the cup of ice, and I walked out of that day, and I said, I think I'm going to be a yes, you can man. I think I'm going to walk into everybody's life and say, yeah, you can get a cup of ice. And yes, you can lift your lid. And yes, your dream can become. I'm going to be a I can man. I'm going to be a lid lifter. You see, if you have an abundance mindset, you believe there's always an answer. There's always an answer. I know there's always an answer. There's always an answer. And if you have an abundance mindset, you believe there's a better answer. There's more than one answer. So what happens is when you find the answer, if you have an abundance mindset, you realize it's a good answer, but there's a better answer. So what does that do? That keeps me from being satisfied. That keeps me from saying, okay, well, I've got it down and this is the way it is and here we are. But I have this yes, you can abundance mindset. Several years ago now, probably, I don't know, 20. My family, we were going to Scotland for a trip, and we're going to play some golf. And so we knew the trip a year ahead, and so we wanted to obviously play the old course, the oldest course where golf was founded and started. And so we, applied to, be registered on the day we were there so we could play golf, and they said they were full. And so we tried every month for all the way up to when we left. And they said we could play the new course, but not the old course. Now, the old course is where it all started. That's what we wanted to play, but the new course is 100 years less old. It's like only 300 years old, okay? And that's the new course. And so we were registered to play on the new course. And I remember the day we pulled up to the old course, the new course are right beside each other. And I'm not satisfied because I want to play the old course. And so I told my brother Larry, I said, Larry, I'll tell you what, let me go in and talk to the steward about playing on the old course. He said, John, they told us no every month. You know that. We'll just go play on the. I said, I know, but I just got to try one more time. So I went into the steward. That's the guy that says yes and no on the registrations, et cetera. And he looked at me and he said, what's your name? I said, John Maxwell. So he's looking in his list. Of course, I know my name's not on the list. But I'll let him look. Miracles happen. And so he finished looking at the list, and he probably said, I'm sorry. He said, I'm a little embarrassed. I don't see your name on the list. I said, well, it's not. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we don't have a tea time. Oh, he said, well, I'm so sorry. He said, we were full today. I'm sorry you won't be able to play. I said, can I ask you a question? Have you ever knowingly helped a person's lifetime dream come true? I mean, have you ever known where you could look and say, I made that person's lifetime dream come true? Has that ever happened to you? And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't think I have. I said, today's your day. And I'm going to help you make your lifetime dream come true by letting my lifetime come true. And he said, well, that would be wonderful. He said, honestly, I would love to be able to say I made, but he said, it's full. I said, well, let me ask you another question. I said, is it possible that somebody won't show up today? Well, he said, that's possible, but it's not probable. It very seldom happens because this is the most important tee time on golf in the world. And I said, I know that. But if someone didn't show up, could you slide us in? Well, he said, I can't do that because then you'd have to go get caddies. And by the time you did that tee time would be gone. Oh, I said, no, it's no problem. We already have caddies. He said, what do you mean? I said, we've already paid caddies for the round that we hope to play. He said, you've already paid them? I said, yes. I said, we want to be ready. We don't want to mess you up. We want to be able to slide right in and you don't have to miss a thing. He said, well, you probably won't get a play. I said, well, the caddies had a real good day. Well, and then he kind of smiled. He said, okay. I said, let me ask you another question. Now, please, you got to understand, there's always an answer. Listen to me. There's always an answer. There's always an answer. I said, do you ever have anybody come a little late? They just kind of, I don't know, they got into traffic. And he said, well, that happens once in a while. I said, we'll be glad to take their place. We'll be glad to slide in. He said, honestly, I don't think those things will happen. I said, I understand, it's okay. And I said, you got other people to take care of, and I've taken up way too much of your time. I'm so sorry, but I'm so excited that my lifetime dream is probably going to be fulfilled today. And he said, well, now, he said, please don't do this. He said, I can't make promises. I said, I know you can't make promises. I'm not even trying to make you make promises. I'll tell you what I'll do. You take care of all the rest of these people. I'll just stand right over here. And the reason I want to stand here is because when something happens and we get the opportunity, I want to be ready. I would never want to mess you up. I would never want to slow you. In fact, when it happens, all you got to do is nod. And I said, we're on that golf course. It's going to be good. I stood over there. He checking some other people in, and of course they were all registered. And every once in a while he'd look over at me, and I'd be. The third time he looked up, I'd probably been standing now for 30 minutes. He looked up and he smiled. And I knew that I had him. I had it. I don't mean this unkind. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I told the guy, I ran out. I told my brother and the family. I said, hey, we're going to get a place. I said, I don't know when, but trust me, he's leaning in now. He's leaning in. And about an hour and a half later, he looked over at me, nodded. We went out there, and the guy that was our caddy had been there. He's been there for 18 years. He said, how did you get on? He said, I've never known anybody to get on unless they were already registered, okay? And I just smiled, and let me tell you something. It's amazing what an abundance mindset will do for you. Hey, listen, you're shutting doors that people haven't even shut. You're knocking once on the door, and you're going back out to your car and say it didn't happen. That abundance mindset, just have it. And then another thing to hit your potential, I hate it. That clock is going too fast. I hate it. It's just, okay, now just give me a second. Dear Lord, what I really hate is this is my conference, and I can't even stop the clock. Good Lord, So number 6. Am I on number 6? Number 6, to reach your potential, I give up to go up. The greatest challenge of tomorrow's success is today's success. And the only way that I can keep reaching my potential is to give up today something so I can have something greater tomorrow. Your life is a series of trade-offs. Everything that you need in life and everything that you want in life, but you don't have it, the reason we don't have it is because it's outside of our comfort zone. So what do we have to do? We have to get out of our comfort zone. Trade-offs are all about getting out of your comfort zone. And the higher you go, the higher the price. So we make trade-offs all the time. I make trade-offs every few months. I have to make another trade-off. And by the way, the higher you go, the harder it is to make the trade-off because you got more. I love people who say, when we started, we gave up everything. And I said, of course you did. You didn't have anything to give up. Good Lord, you had nothing. But as you go higher, are you with me? You go higher, you have absolutely more. I made 7 major career moves in my life, and 5 of them, I went for a lot less money, a lot less prestige, but I went because there was potential there. And remember this, you don't leave something, you go to something. Don't do. If you leave something, guess what? You keep turning around. You keep looking back and saying, "Oh my gosh, wow, I've lost some friends, and gosh, I lost my title, lost my parking place." Number seven. Number seven, I prioritize very well. To reach your potential, you have to continually prioritize. And here's why. Activity is not necessarily accomplishment. And so therefore, when we're in activity, when somebody tells me they're busy, it really doesn't mean a lot to me. There's a lot of people that are busy and they're as ineffective as can be. It's not how hard you work, it's how smart you work. And when you read my book on Developing the Leader Within You 2.0, man, I talk about this. I talk about the 3 R's. What's required of me, what gives me my greatest return, and what gives me my greatest reward. You got to line those 3 R's up together. And when you line those 3 R's up together, it becomes absolutely huge. To reach my potential, number 8, I'm moving fast. I'm really am, because I've got something very exciting right after this that I want to share with you. Number 8 is I know how to get a return on failure. I realize that in failure there is something that gives me a return if I know how to get it. Wow. Number 9. I'm so proud of mine. I just skipped some great stuff there. Good Lord. Wow. By the way, I just wrote a book since Christmas, another book. But I'm always writing. And right after Christmas, I said, I need to write a book on how to receive a return on failure. And I wrote it, and Charlie's finishing it off right now, and it'll come out. I don't know, sometime. It'll come out sometime either at the end of this year or the first of next year, and it's just going to be on how to receive a return on failure. Because how many of you have failed at least once today? Sure, we all do. You see, the question is not, are you going to fail? The question is, are you going to get a return on it? A positive return. And I know how to do that. Number 9, I develop leaders. I develop people around me that can apply and multiply. Do you know how proud I am to sit in this conference over here on the edge of the front row and watch all these people come and teach on personal growth and development, and to realize that this incredible team of leaders that we're building and developing, and it's so wonderful. Honestly, I'm hanging in, but they don't need me. They don't need. You want to become. Sometimes they'll say that leader is so amazing, they're irreplaceable. Can I tell you something? If you're irreplaceable, you're not a good leader. Your goal isn't to be irreplaceable. Your goal is to be replaceable. Your goal is to equip and train people. I used to tell my staff all the time, your goal is I'm going to hire you to do this job, and it's your job to work yourself out of this job. And if you work yourself out of this job, I'll give you another one. But if you don't work yourself out of the job, I'm going to take it away from you. We all want to, you want to train people, develop people, equip people, and then watch them run and watch them go and watch them develop. One more, number 10, and I won't stay here long because this is kind of faith. But number 10 is, I've always had God room in my life. I've always had a place for God to do exceeding abundantly more than I could do. And I had a mentor when I was very young, and I'm a person of faith, but I had a mentor when I was very young, said, John, I want you to attempt something so big that if it ever happens, people will look at you and say, I know you. You're not that good. And they'll give God the credit. And that's how I've tried to live. I've tried to live my life. And what we're seeing in Transformation of Nations is just absolutely huge. And I'm so excited about it. But I try to have God. And by the way, when you hit your potential, when you get to the ceiling of your potential, you are on the floor of God's room. You understand that. You're just now touching where He stands. And He'll take you to a whole new level. I shared in part 1, real quick review here. I shared words. One of the things I do when I'm getting ready to create thought is on a piece of paper, I put a statement, which is kind of a thesis statement, and then I put one-word thoughts underneath of it that kind of are like connect the dots back to that statement. And last week in the lesson, and by the way, you can go back and pick up that lesson if you want to, I gave you 5 words. Let me give them to you now.
And number one was humility. And basically what I taught in humility, because this is so important, is humility, it moves us from the center to the side. When we're not humble, we're in the middle of everything. It's all about us. And what happens with a crisis is that it moves all of us, and all of a sudden we realize, just like John Kennedy, oh God, your ocean is so big and my boat is so small. All of a sudden we realize that we don't have answers and we're not quite as good as we thought we were. And humility is a beautiful virtue because it gets me off of me and thinking about me and what are my needs and puts me to the side, and I begin to think about you. And how can I be your helper and your keeper? So the first word was humility. It's a very anchoring word during a crisis. The second was about adaptability. If you really want to do well in a crisis and prepare yourself for tomorrow, you just have to be able to adjust and be flexible. I talk about that in one of my later books, Leader Shift. And I talk about the fact that if you can shift well, you really go through the storm much, much better. And I talked in that lesson last week about detours, because what a crisis does is a crisis brings detours in our life. Whenever you think of a crisis, here's what I know. How you did things is not how you do them now. The journey you took isn't the same journey. In fact, you go to the path that you know so well and the road that you traveled so much, and what do you see? You see a detour sign and you go, oh my gosh, I want to go that way, but I gotta go that way. And so we get on the detour tour. Now my problem is whenever I'm on a detour, I can hardly wait to get off of it. I want to get, all through that, let me get through that maze and get back to where I know I'm going to be able to get going. On this detour tour, don't be in such a hurry to get off of it. You literally are going to see things you've never seen. You're going to be able to understand things you've never understood. Take your time. Go slow on the detour tour. Because I can promise you, there are things you need to see, the things you need to know that will be opportunities for you in your future. I know that for a fact. So many times, our setbacks become springboards because we just have to go see something, think differently, experience something totally opposite of what we've known. And all of a sudden we think, oh my, there's value in that detour. So adaptability is a huge word of maximizing your potential now so you can be sure to, seize the future tomorrow. The third word I gave was a little phrase, and that's open-handedness. And I taught in that lesson last week about the fact we're either closed-handed or we're open-handed. And if we're closed-handed, my friend Mark Victor Hansen shared this one time with me. He said, John, if you have a scarcity mindset and you just have your hand closed and you're trying to hold on to what you got because it's the only thing that you got and you don't want anyone else to have it, he said, every time an opportunity comes by that closed hand, you miss the opportunity because you're holding on to what you have that's so important that you're not willing to let go and see something that could be bigger or better. And we just need to be open-handed. My wife went out this morning and got our kind of carry-out breakfast. We're still not able to go to restaurants down here in southern Florida. And so when she came back and we were having our breakfast together, a little carry-out, she said, I gave the people there an extra large tip today. And I said, good, I'm proud of you, honey. That's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Every time I go out, I double, triple tip. I mean, there's a real loss out there in that business community, in those restaurants, and they're not getting the income they have. And I can't make up the whole difference, but I'd like to make up a little. And open-handed is a huge way of generous spirit to have during this crisis. The fourth word I talked about was just having discussions, which is nothing more than sitting down with other people and having discussions about what are you learning from the experience, and shared thinking, shared discussions just really make us all better. If you have a good thought and I have a good thought and we share those thoughts, we both have a better thought because we came together. So I talked about the value of discussions. And then fifthly, I said there's great value in reflection and asking questions as you reflect, because reflection takes experience and turns it into insight. Now I'm about to give you I think it is 5 more words in this lesson, but I'm going to give you some more words that'll help maximize your potential. But before I do that, though, I've never seen a time. I think you know. I have a coaching company, John Maxwell Team, and we have 33,000 coaches in 162 countries in the world. We're the largest, fastest growing coaching company in the world, and I've never in my life seen a time where coaching was more essential than right now. People are looking for answers. They're looking for somebody to come alongside of them, help them, give them guidance, coach them a little bit. And so we just have an incredible certification program for our coaches that really takes them and gives them the skills that they need to not only help other people during a crisis like this, but to really have a skill set that they can develop an entire coaching career. We have a whole bunch of people, thousands of people that has become a career for them, and they're coaches and they're entrepreneurial and they're just growing and developing, and it's our joy to certify them. And I say that because we just had a webinar recently in which we taught people coaching skills and a little bit more about what we can do for them, and it was totally full. And I want to encourage you. If this kind of resonates and you're kind of saying, I'd like to be on John's coaching team. I'd like to, or at least I'd like to know how to maybe be equipped. I mean, some of you maybe are saying, this maybe wouldn't be my full-time career, but it could be a part-time job. I don't know. But let me just say this. If this kind of resonates with you right now, just take this down real quickly. I want you to go to, okay, are you ready? coachwithjohn.com. coachwithjohn.com. And we will have there a free webinar for you that will show you how to build your coaching business, okay? So just write it down as I'm going to give you the rest of this lesson right now, but just write it down, coachwithjohn.com. If you'll do that, some of you will look back at this crisis and say, this is where I got a whole new career. This is where I got a whole fresh breath of life as far as who I am and what I can do. We would love, love, love to serve you and work with you.
3 points where he asks questions of himself. Why should I start with myself? And so let's just jump right into those. The first one, he talks about the difference between a travel agent versus a tour guide. And so I would love for you to be a tour guide for us a little bit today. He says, when we start with ourselves, it gives us experience and confidence and integrity and influence. So based on your history and your life and you starting and working on yourself, where did you start in those areas in the ways of experience and confidence, integrity and influence in developing those? And what did you learn along the way that you can share with somebody who is just taking those first few steps?
Well, again, I really will tell you that I have found in life that making the decision inside yourself before you start a business, before you start a new job, before you stand on stage and give a public address, a public speech for the first time.
Right.
Before you do before you run a marathon, before you do anything, you've got to settle it in your mind. Is it going to be or is it not? Are there a set of circumstances that will stop you from the journey that you're setting out to accomplish? And it's called counting the cost, right? I have spent much of my life before I start something counting the cost. My daughter right now is she's really working hard to get some qualifications for a particular school she wants to get into. She's a junior in high school, and she is so eaten up with the sense of I've got to do it, that she's missing a very important part of her life. And so I looked at her and I said, Macy, what's the worst thing that could happen? And she said, I won't get into this particular school. And I went, that's the worst thing? And she said, yeah. I said, you're going to be perfect. It doesn't matter. And she said, but it does matter to me. I said, good, keep it that way, but don't let yourself not count the cost of what could happen. Because if you do all the work that you're doing right now and you miss it by a point or you miss it by a person, are you going to feel like everything you've done up to this point
Was a
was a
waste.
waste. And she said, yes. I said, then we got to recalculate. Because everything you're doing right now is not a waste. And if you do not get in, you still will be a better student, a better person because of all the work that you're putting in. It's the same thing here, Tracy, for me. When John was talking today, I felt like the times where I started a business initiative, not just started growing myself. We've talked a lot about growth. We started out our Mind in Your Comments about growth. But imagine starting a business for the first time. Well, you don't have experience. You don't have confidence. You don't have integrity, and you don't have influence. You have never done it before. I went to school. Many of you know this. I went to a little small Christian college called Jackson College of Ministries. They did not teach business. So when John, there was something, I had been running John's businesses for 10 years as a vice president or something else, somebody above me that had more education, more experience, more confidence, more than me. I'll never forget the first time he looked at me and said, hey, I think I want you to be the CEO. And I went, I've never ran a business before. He said, what have you been doing the last 10 years? I said, running parts of a business. He said, so running parts of a business is not running a business. I went, well, I guess it is, isn't it? Immediately, by changing my perspective, I began to understand. Let me give you a couple of other things.
I love this.
Why is it, Tracy, you've started businesses. Why is it that people don't start? Why is it that you and I, and that's a rhetorical question because I've got 3 reasons I think, and then I want to hear what you say.
Good.
I believe the reason that people don't start improving their life, I believe the reason that people don't start a new business, I believe the reason people won't start betting on themselves to join a growth app or to do something like that, I believe it stems from what I think is 3 dominant excuses. One is the fear of failure,
agree.
Fear of embarrassment, fear of being revealed as a poser. It's fear. It's fear. That's why when John and I, and he's working on it right now, but several years ago, about a year ago, I was giving an interview to somebody that was writing a book on the dirty F word. I loved it. It's the failure. Failure.
I bet that caught you off
Yes,
guard.
it did catch you off guard. And Amy, I love you out there. She's a podcast listener. And I loved it immediately. The fear of failure, the dirty F word. We think failure is the dirty F word when really it's not.
No.
In fact, it's what caused John, giving him a conversation that Amy and I had in interviewing that book, to where John came up with the concept, getting a return on your failure. If we would start something knowing that the worst thing we could do is to get an invaluable lesson for the next thing we were going to start,
Right.
we would remove the fear of failure that
That's
stops
so
us from
true.
starting. What's the second thing that stops us from starting? I believe it is being uncomfortable. Nobody wants to be uncomfortable, and starting something is always uncomfortable. So we don't start because of fear. We don't start because we don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
And yet, any person that's done anything worth repeating or worth creating a legacy around had to start and be uncomfortable along the way. I think the third reason that people don't start is because of loneliness. Now let's talk about what we're talking about today. So whether you want to start a business, whether you want to start a new initiative, whether you want to start something new in your life, or whether you just want to start making yourself better, look at fear and fear of failure as going to give you a return. Look at being uncomfortable as your friend, and look at loneliness as a chance to get in touch with yourself. Because I have found in my loneliness, the only person in my loneliness is me. And I have found I'm a pretty good friend to myself. I have found friendship with myself. I have found acceptance with myself. When everybody else, all the noise, all the other relationships moved out of the way because I was starting something new, I began to fall in love with myself. I'm a pretty good guy to myself. I'm a pretty good friend to myself. But everybody else's distractions causes me to lose my way in the identity that I really need to be in touch with. And so those things, I believe, we need to eliminate and lean into so that we can start more effectively.
If you are driving or you're working out and you didn't have a chance to take notes, I hope that you will print out these, and that's not in the notes, but I hope you will take notes and onto the notes that we've given to you, because those right there are powerful. And before I move to the next one, I also want to highlight what you said, what your advice was to Macy, your daughter, highlighting number one, the fear of failure, looking like a poser, what other people are going to think of you. I like what you did there because you had her look at what her worst case scenario was. And I think a lot of people, I don't know if you want to dive into that a little bit more or just expand on it just a little bit, but I think some people would be nervous to hear you say that, hey, what if you don't make it, Macy? And then what? Then what are you going to do? And then do you have a plan B? Do you have a second tier? Do you have some people set up this high ideal of what they're shooting for, and if they miss it, there's no second plan, then everything is lost. And so what was your advice to Macy? What is your advice to our podcast listeners is there a second tier of, if I, that old saying, if I shoot for the moon, at least I land among the stars. What is that if I miss the moon, if I miss my ideal, if Macy misses her school? What is your advice to her for if she were to miss it, her worst case scenario?
Well, so again, let me say this. I'm a law of navigation guy. I've said that before in this podcast. John says of all the leaders he's had work alongside him that I exercise the law of navigation. A leader must chart the course. I exercise that better than anyone that's ever worked alongside him. So I'm a chart the course kind of guy, right? That's my bent.
Right.
Therefore, it does not intimidate me or disappoint me to consider the cost and the difficulties and the setbacks along the way. In fact, it energizes me so that when I hit them, I'm already thinking of a workaround because I've already calculated. I told Macy, I said, Macy, if you were to set a goal of 60, you wanted to get $60 at the end of a day after a long, hard day of work, and you got 65, would you be excited? She said, yes. I said, what if the next day you set a goal for 100 and you got $85? Would you be excited? She went, no. And I, wait. You got 65 one day, you got 85 the next day, and the next day with more, you would not be excited because the goal is more important or the progress is more important. She said, well, it's the progress. I said, well, you didn't just answer it that way.
Yeah.
You answered as if the goal is the most important thing rather than progress.
That is so good.
And I said, now, Macy, if you spend 2 years trying to get into, it's Emory University, by the way. If anybody's out there at Emory and listens to the podcast, help me get Macy.
Look for Macy Cole. Macy Cole is her name.
This plug has been brought to you by, I'm just kidding. She really wants to get into an establishment because of where she wants to go. Sorry for putting that out there. But she, and I said, if you do all this work that's required, because this is a highly respectable institution, and you do all this work and you don't make it, is that worse than not doing the work at all and getting into some secondary school? And she went, no. I said, so then therefore, the goal that is pressing you to work harder, because a lesser goal would make you work less, is still an admirable goal. Because now you're going to be able to hit something greater than you would.
I know that somebody needed to hear that because I think a lot of people shoot for the 100, and if they hit 85, they are disappointed in themselves and they feel like a failure. I know people need to hear that. It's been me before because I get caught up with the goal. So we have a couple more. I feel like my next question I was going to ask, how do you mentor yourself? And I feel like you just sort of shared that with us, which I love so much.
I would like to talk to you a minute with Maxwell today on developing yourself, growing yourself. Because really what I am is I'm in the people development business. Pretty much I walk into people's life, find out where they are, and then through serving and adding value to them, hopefully help them get better. That's what I do. I'm glad you're with me on a Minute with Maxwell because in about a minute, I can give you a thought or two that would help you to develop yourself because I think most people would like to get better. In fact, if you really don't want to get better, you can just turn Minute with Maxwell off because this is what Minute with Maxwell is all about, helping you get better. What we have to understand about developing ourselves and getting better is that it doesn't take brilliance and it doesn't take a lot of time and it doesn't even take a lot of effort, but it must be intentional. That's the word I want to implant in your mind for a moment. The fact that you don't get better automatically, you only get better because you intentionally make a decision to get better. And here's my word for you today on Minute with Maxwell. Here's how this works. You have to go from being a person of good intentions to a person of good actions. That's the great separator. To develop yourself,
You've got to get out of the intending world and get into the doing world. In fact, your good intentions are good intentions, but they're worthless. Totally worthless. The most overrated phrase in the world is good intentions. I know all kinds of people, they have good intentions, but they never do good because they didn't act upon what they knew. So if you want to develop yourself and you want to get better, just act on what you've already expressed that you want to do. The moment you quit talking about it and start doing it, now you've got something. I had a friend named Randy one time who came to me and said, John, your talk talks and your walk talks, but your walk talks a lot louder than your talk talks. That's true. Become a person of action today.
So let's share some ways of how to become more resilient.
And I've kind of put it in the title. I want you thinking about yourself for sure, but this is something I think leaders can really teach, to your point about teach others. You're going to see people that react in different ways, some positively, some negatively, in the dynamics, the circumstances that are going on around them. So how can we help them? And number one is to cultivate, develop a growth mindset. If you're not familiar with mindset and Carol Dweck's work on that about a fixed or a growth mindset, you can, I think we have another podcast on that, but the growth mindset is really a person who believes that I can get better. My intelligence is not fixed. My abilities are not fixed. They can grow. And you think about if you're continue growing and improving your skills, your abilities, if you embrace that growth mindset, that when you face these challenges, I think I shared on the podcast not too long ago about I was going through a really hard time, a lot of expectations on me, a lot of demands, and I just thought, why is it so hard? I just thought maybe I should just quit. Maybe I'm in the wrong line. And then it hit me that this is what resilience is about. In the statement from Jim Rohn that said, stop wishing things were easier, wish you were better. And that to me is the growth mindset. It could be hard for a moment, but if you're growing and learning, you'll get better and you'll come through it. And that's what I want the growth mindset to mean.
If someone has a fixed mindset and believes that they can't grow and improve, it's going to be very difficult for them to be resilient and to lead through certain challenges and times. And we talk a lot about having this growth mindset versus a goal mindset. And I love the fact that, man, if we're going to be resilience, it starts with ourselves. That aligns with all the principles that we teach, but you got to be growing in that every single day. Well, number two, and this is something that, man, I want everybody to just really listen in here because I think this is so important no matter what level you lead. Practice self-care. Okay, so number two, how do we develop resilience in yourself and others? Practice self-care. You have to take care of yourself in order to be resilient. That includes enough sleep. I'm not going to give you a certain number of hours because it's just enough for you personally. What do you need?
But you probably need more than you think.
Probably need more than you think. Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you taking breaks when you need? I know that the older I get, I can't imagine what it's like for you. But there are times that I have to just be like, do I need to go take a nap?
Yeah,
right?
right.
Do I need to take a little power nap? But man, and even sometimes when I'm at home on the weekends or even I take a nap, I'm like, man, that was awesome. But you're right. We probably need more than we are aware of, but you got to take care of yourself. And when you prioritize your self-care and what that looks like, man, you'll be amazed at how you're able to handle stress and challenges a lot differently.
Yes, and I didn't see that coming, but
I completely. For those that maybe aren't watching on YouTube and are listening, Perry is still baffled by that comment. He will talk to me about that later. He will hold me accountable for that. A previous lesson.
I actually like that. That was really clever, which doesn't normally happen by you. So.
I love it.
Okay, self-care. This is personal. Practicing self-care is really something I've struggled with. I get busy. I'm focused. I am running hard. I'm traveling. It's just so tempting to not get up and do the things you talked about. We joke about, the airline says, put your mask on first. That is really good advice. You're no good to anyone going through the tough and difficult challenges of your business, of your life, at your home. You're no good to anyone if you're not taking care of you. So it starts with the rest and how you treat yourself. Totally believe that what you said was exactly right there.
And let me just also, exercise is extremely important. I know you're a big advocate on getting your steps. And so whether it's walking, whether it's doing something, exercise under the weight that we carry as human beings and leaders, I just would encourage you to think about the self-care, to be active in some way, and you'll be amazed at how that helps reduce the stress and makes you more resilient.
Was that a pun? You said the weight we carry? Yeah, that was. Yeah.
That's good.
Good
You're
job.
on your game
I
today.
am. Well, you got me focused now.
Yeah.
Number 3, we would think about being a person more resilient and teaching resilience was to build a support system. So you think about having taken care of self-care, but it is a support system for you, having a network of, supportive colleagues, people that we bounce things off of. Our team acts like that a lot. Do I have mentors? Do I have friends? Like you said earlier, we cope with a lot of stress, a lot of things that are on us. I need people around me. I need to be able to share. I need to be able to talk about that. Are there people that offer you encouragement that look? We often talk about, I know I teach a lot lately on the inner circle. Do I have people that I can lean on when I'm struggling, that can tell me the hard thing, that can tell me the good thing, that encourage me, that lift me up, that also challenge me? But I think it's a lot to have a listening ear, someone that will pay attention and care for you when you're in a tough place. So, and not only self-care, but also having a support network.
I love that. Not only for yourself, but also for your team. And maybe even as an organization, are there outside connections and vendors that you can just put in place that would build a support system that, at their discretion, they can go and use or tap into those. And so just be thinking about that from a support system. I think it's key to it. Number 4, learn from mistakes. Resilient leaders view mistakes as learning opportunities. We view it the exact same way. We're in alignment with that. And when leaders make mistakes, they can use that experience to improve the skills and help them avoid those mistakes in the future. Just make sure you're learning from them, and don't be hesitant about it. You're going to make mistakes. Allow mistakes. I would say even encourage mistakes unless it becomes a fatal flaw for the organization. But what are we learning from them? And as you learn from them, you'll become more resilient.
Yeah, I think about almost like psychological safety on the team. Are mistakes okay, or do I need to hide it? I can't possibly tell you I've made a mistake because I don't know how you're going to react. So feeling safe and like I belong, it's okay to share where I'm struggling, makes a lot of the ability to go through tough times a lot easier. I like that, it's really enough pressure right now to get things done quickly, to keep the business moving, to keep things happening. But I don't want people holding back or hiding things from me. I need to know that it's okay to make. John calls it failing forward, and we want to make sure that we learn from every mistake or setback that we have. But a great way to get through with resilience is to know that I don't have to carry more stress or weight because of a mistake. I can just share it, learn from it, and move forward. Number 5, we talked about on a couple of podcasts, but about embracing change. I find that if you're adaptable, what a great word for a leader, to really be adaptable and open to change, you just become more resilient. You're not thrown off your game because something in the plan changed, something in what your customers do, something in the market. You're able to embrace change. You adjust. I think you said this recently about adjusting your plans. The vision doesn't change, but the plans and strategies may change to get there. And by being able to do that, I don't get overrun by the changes that are happening. I can be adaptable to that.
There are a lot of changes that will happen because of you, but then also without you. And so we need, and to you, that to you is probably the one that may impact us the most. And so I think it was a former military leader that said, if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance a whole lot less. And so we need to be adaptable. We need to remain adaptable. And by doing that, we'll be able to overcome a lot of things that we are currently facing. Well, number 6 is to stay positive. This is something that we can control. And as we think about developing this in ourselves and our teams, we absolutely control this. A positive attitude can help us face challenges, can help us understand and work through setbacks. It gives you kind of a positive view of it, allows you to respond and to stay motivated and to bounce back during some of those failures or setbacks that you may have.
Well, I love that, and definitely your attitude and your positive, optimistic outlook going through even tough times can help. I go back to Eric Greitens and his book on resilience. One of the quotes that I'd captured there, he says, "Don't expect a time in your life when you will be free of change, free of struggle, or free from worry." He said, to be resilient, you must understand that your objective is not to come to rest, because there is no rest.
Wow.
I think oftentimes we think that, I'll just get. I had on a call this morning. The guy said, I just got to get to the end of March. And if I can just get through March, it'll be better. And I hated to tell him there's an old proverb that says, behind this mountain are more mountains. Because when
April's coming.
Yeah, that's right. When I get to my next call, he'll say, I got to get through April. Your objective is not to come to rest. Your objective is to, and this is another Eric Greitens, he said, use what hits you to change your trajectory to a positive direction. And he said resilience is often endurance with direction. I love that.
That is so good.
Whatever hits you, it's just it may knock you off path for a moment, but it just changes your trajectory into a path where you endure. And when you do these 5 or 6 things we talked about, I think it really helps us to be people of resilience, that we actually shine brightest when things are hardest.
I love that. Don't just endure with direction. That is strong. I love that. Well, as we wrap up today this is just scratching the surface. We have more to come on this topic, not only for you to consume through podcasts, but also we're going to be working on some corporate training that we'll be able to bring this to you. And what makes me think, as I wrap up here, is we had one of our newest executive facilitators and coaches come in and talk about resilience. A former military individual, extremely competent and strong when it comes to delivering content and from his leadership experiences. And as I was thinking about this lesson, one way to wrap up today, he gave us this illustration. And he said, hey, when you're sitting on a chair, you got the 4 legs, no problem. Those 4 legs could be certain areas of your life. They could be your personal life, your professional life, your spiritual life, your whatever, family, right? So just pick 4 legs. And he said, if you get completely out of whack and maybe one of the legs completely is awry, you can make it. You can be resilient. You can work through all those things, and as you balance on those 3 legs. But man, if you let the 3rd leg get swiped out from underneath you, it's over. And in essence, he was really talking about how do we keep balance around each one of those 4 legs or those areas of our life. And I think it's in direct alignment with what you talked about with these principles of having a growth mindset, self-care, have a support team, learn from our mistakes, embrace the change, and then stay positive. So you take those 6 principles and you say, do I have those 6 principles in the 4 areas of my life? And am I working on all different stages, no doubt, in different places? But we got to make sure that we're keeping that balance. I know balance is a hard word for us to talk about as leaders. I struggle with it. But as we have that balance, when we're able to do that, I think, and his point was very well taken by me and our team, was when you have that, you can be extremely resilient no matter what's going on one of those legs of the chair. So just keep that in mind. You can develop resilience, not only personally, but in your team. And one way to do it is to think about these 6 principles that Perry put together for us today.
The more we grow, the more we know we need to grow. In other words, when you start growing and developing yourself, the first thing you're going to find is that instead of feeling like you know more and you've kind of arrived, the more you learn and the more you know, the less you feel you've arrived. In fact, you know what I have found? The only people who think they're arrived are people that don't know much. Alvin Toffler in Future Shock once observed, the illiterate of the future are not those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Abraham Lincoln said, I don't think much of a man who is not wiser today than he was yesterday. This is not in your notes, but Andy Rooney on 60 Minutes, he said, when I got to college, I looked back on what I had done with such pride in high school and wondered how I could have been so young. When I went to work for a newspaper and started cleaning out boxes of things I'd written for the college newspaper, I burned them hastily so no one would ever know how bad I had been as a writer. Over the years, whenever I've looked back on things that I wrote in the past, they seem, how shall I say, not so good. That's okay for high school, college, and early newspaper pieces I wrote. But now I notice as I look back on things I wrote last week and decide that this week I'm finally growing up and writing better, what am I going to think of this next week? What was he saying? It's very simple. The more I grow, the more I know I don't know. Here's the way this works. The more we grow, the more we know, and the more that we grow, the more we know that we need to grow some more. That's exactly the way it works. When I think about this statement, I'm reminded of the little girl who thought that she had exhausted mathematics when she had learned the 12 times table. Remember when you had to learn the 12 times table? She got through the whole 12 times table with a little twinkle in his eye. Her grandfather said, well, now that you know all the numbers up through 12, he says, what does 13 times 13? And she said, oh, don't be silly, Grandpa. There's no such thing. There are 4 different development levels that people go through as they move from dependence to independence. And each of these stages demonstrate a different combination of competence and commitment. For example, number 1, enthusiastic beginner. This is where they start. This is the first level of development. This person is excited about doing something, but has little knowledge about how to proceed. You see that all the time, don't you? Oh, they're so excited. They don't have a clue, but they're excited. Never allow enthusiasm to replace discipline or a plan. One of the weaknesses I see in people is they put way too much of a high priority on enthusiasm and way too little priority on a disciplined plan. In other words, when you get done being excited and your feet touch the ground, I have one question for you. After your hip, hip, hooray and hype, what you going to do to get to the next level? Number 2. Usually in the phases, you go from enthusiastic beginner to number 2, which is disillusioned learner. In other words, soon after beginning a new task, an individual commonly experiences reality shock. The difference between what they expected and the reality of the situation. While a disillusioned learner knows more than when he started a job, a goal, or task, the excitement and enthusiasm has decreased. We've all seen that, where they get excited and they start learning, and they think, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get there. Level 3, or stage 3, is capable but cautious performer. Capable but cautious performer. Most individuals enter a stage of self-doubt and become a capable but cautious performer. They know how to do the task but are nervous about doing it on their own. Let me just say something about this level, just a statement. Stay with them until they have knowledge and confidence. They need more than knowledge, they need confidence. Stay with them long enough that they not only know what to do, but they feel confident in doing it. Number 4, the 4th stage, is self-reliant achiever. This is a person now that becomes a peak performer. With proper support, an individual can eventually reach this stage and be able to perform the task independently. Diagnosing your level of development will help you to develop a plan to reach peak performance on any job, skill, or goal. That's some good stuff from Ken Blanchard. John Wooden said it this way, and I love this statement. He said, it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. I looked at that statement. It's what you learn after you know it all that counts. And I asked myself, well, what are the characteristics of people who learn after they know it all? Because don't we all know people that they know it all and they never learn another thing the rest of their life? Well, what are the characteristics of a person who learns after they know it all? These are quick and simple. 1 is humility. That's a fact. You have to be humble. Number 2 is security. You have to be secure. You have to be willing, even no matter what your position is, to say, I don't know it all yet. Number 3, you have to be willing to change. There has to be a willingness to change in your life or my life. Number 4 is good listening skills. And number 5, continually being growth conscious.
Because, see, if you're growth conscious instead of goal conscious, you will keep learning after you know it all.
I'm going to talk about accountability not as a word, but as a principle. Because what I've discovered is that this is something very essential to people's life, but it's something that a lot of people don't really want. I've often said in leadership that I would never follow a leader that wasn't accountable. Somebody asked me that one time, well, why would you not follow a leader that is not accountable? And I said, it's because I don't trust them. And they kind of looked at me as a negative person, and so I kind of wanted to just kind of rattle their world a little bit, so I said, I don't trust you either. And then I said, oh, by the way, I don't trust me. You see, we're all human. And we all have times in our lives when we don't do the right thing. So why have accountability in your life is to have someone in your life that will help you do the right thing. I had an accountability partner for many years as a leader. His name was Bill, great guy. And we would meet every month. And I had him ask me the hard questions on purpose because I just wanted to make sure that I would do the right thing. And to be honest with you, to do the right thing is easier if somebody holds you accountable than if no one holds you at all accountable. And so every month we would have a lunch together. It'd be about an hour and a half. And in that lunch, he would ask me 5 questions. And in those 5 questions, I would answer them. But the last question is the question I want to just mention for a moment because it's the one that always cracked me up, and it was the one that always got me. Because after he asked me the 4 questions, we kind of talked them through. His last question is, John, have you lied about any of the previous questions? And there are times I'd say, well, Bill, let's go back to number 3 for a moment. I kind of maybe colored that one just a little bit. Now, why did I ask him to ask me that question? Because I've lied before. Don't look at me like that. So have you. Accountability is for the person who really wants to get better. And here's what I've discovered. People that truly want to get better and improve, they welcome accountability. And people who don't want to get better and don't want to improve, they don't want accountability. For me, I think for you, I think it's essential. And by the way, Bill made me a lot better. I hope you find someone in your life that loves you unconditionally. You got to have that. But then you can go to, and they can help you like Bill helped me. I promise you, you're better with somebody holding you accountable than with people not holding you accountable and you're just kind of doing your own thing.
Hey, here's what I was thinking about as you were just talking. I was thinking about this lesson that John gave us, and then the conversation we had with Jake about the gratitude and the anticipation. And here's what I was thinking. I was thinking about the weight that you carry right now of where we're going in the future of our enterprise. And I was thinking of the gratitude that all of us have for John and the point that we've gotten to today because we stand on his shoulders, but yet we have this anticipation of what is to come in the future. And I was thinking about, John talks about in his first point here, he says, hey, you reveal your potential by where you focus. And a lot of times I, running our corporate division, will talk to our team members, I'll talk to our customers to try to figure out what are their future needs. You're sitting in a seat right now where you're talking to John every day about what is it that is in the future. What do you desire? What's inside your heart for that? What do you want your legacy to be? And so I just want to open up right here, and I want to say, man, you are having the opportunity to ride shotgun with a guy that's in essence explaining to you on a daily basis. You're seeing him live it out, what the future is for our enterprise. Talk a little bit about that. Talk a little bit about the weight of focusing on the future and everything that you're learning from John as you're going through and leading our enterprise in this experience.
Well, it's so thank you, Chris. And let me be relatable, I think, to most every one of our podcast listeners. Have you ever stepped into the shoes of a previous leader
set out to define the future, and you spent more time focusing on what they did right or what they did wrong.
Mm.
And all of us leaders do that. We're tempted. We want to come in and we want to make a splash. But yet, if the leader that we are superseding or succeeding, if they're a great leader, we have a temptation to be just like that leader. Oh, they did this, so I better do this because I don't want to mess up the mojo, the good formula of success. Or some of us have probably had the assignment of following a poor leader, and we wanted to come out with a bang and show what they did wrong and that we are different. I believe both perspectives are incorrect. Focusing on the future is you, leader, me, leader, focusing on our best self. It's like putting on the armor of somebody else. King David, the old king of Israel that followed Saul, and Saul wanted him to put on his armor to go fight the giant in the famous story. And David was like, man, I can't do this. I just got to go out with my sling and my stone, and I got to do something. Well, in following John, the days that are not so good are the days I realize how incredible he is, how I will never be as good as John, and how I don't know if I can envision a future brighter than John. All that's comparative.
Yes.
The days that I were struggling when I did follow more difficult leaders was the day when I went, oh, they did it like this, but I want to do it like this. They did this, but that didn't work for them. I want to do this. Neither one brings out the best of me. Where I get, and you get, podcast listeners, where we get the greatest traction is when we go, this is what we've been given. This is what we're grateful for. We're thankful for it. These are the shoulders, the broad shoulders that I stand on. But this is the potential of where me and my team can go. And as you focus on the future, one of the greatest things that I can give you, don't do it with comparative analysis. This is what was so good about the previous leader. This is what was so bad about the previous leader. This is how I'm going to be different. Focus on the opportunity and the anticipation of you becoming the best version of you. And as a company leader, the day that John says about writing books, Chris, you've heard him say this. People ask him all the time, John Maxwell, what's your favorite book out of 86? And he says, the one I'm writing now, which is so funny. And people kind of laugh, of course, yeah, John, of course. But no, it's really true. Yeah. In fact, then John carries on and makes that point much more poignant. He says, the day I'm not most excited about what I'm doing right now is the day I should have hung up the hat and stopped. Now, to me and you, Chris, the day that we believe yesterday was better than what we can make and anticipate for tomorrow is the day we need to stop leading the organization.
That's so good.
Listen to me, leaders. I want to bang on my home office desk right now.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.